Okay. Hello. Hi, everybody. This is Kathy Frey from IMCO, from the International Integrated Maternity Healthcare Organisation, and welcome along to this webinar, our Maternity Natural Health series. And we are welcoming today the wonderful Joanne O'Leary. So say hello, Joanne.
Hello, thank you for having me on today.
This is very exciting. And everybody, as you're just signing on in, do let us know. Please go into the chat. We would love to hear whereabouts in the world you are and what your role is as a health professional, or maybe you are a mum who's expecting. So do let us know where you are and your role. That would just be wonderful. And so the format today is once I finish this introduction, I'm going to hand over to Joanne, and she's got some great PowerPoint slides that she's going to be going over with you, which will take around about half an hour or so. If you've got any questions, please type those into the Q&A, which is a button down the bottom of your screen. And please go into there and just let us know any questions that you have, and we'll absolutely make sure that I'll make sure that those questions are answered before we wind up today. But we also will have sort of some space at the end there for a bit of general chat. So the topic today is about supporting the mother and unborn baby in pregnancy, which is a pregnancy that follows a perinatal loss. And perinatal, of course, means pregnancy or post-pregnancy. So we are talking about it may be a miscarriage or a stillbirth or a newborn baby that is deceased. So this is a really, such a sensitive topic. So I'm glad we're going to be, talking about this one holistically. But just to give you a little bit of background on Joanne, she has a PhD and various other qualifications that she can go through. And her background was in preschool special education, where she was an infant teacher parent coordinator, followed by 18 years as a parent infant specialist and high risk perinatal centre. So that's going to be really interesting to hear a little bit about. And Joanne is currently a consultant to the Star Legacy Foundation and facilitates groups for bereaved families in their pregnancy following loss and parenting after loss when the babies are born, which is, that's a toughie. Her research focuses on how perinatal loss and the pregnancy that follows impacts parents, children, and extended family members. And probably one of the most common things I hear as a midwife is, I'm so worried, so they spend a lot of that time in that next pregnancy, so worried. And Joanne has spoken nationally and internationally on how that loss impacts families. She's got over 50 articles published, and she's written 2 book chapters as well, and 2 books on the topic. And tomorrow, for those that are watching live, we will be, and those that are registered who will be watching later, we'll be sending you an automated message through Zoom, which will give you some contact details for Joanne as well. So you'll be able to follow up with further information from her if you need. So welcome, Joanne. We're going to be talking about bereaved fathers, children, extended family members, and of course the mum. So welcome.
Thank you. So should we go ahead and start?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start. So I'll let actually I'll just have a quick look in our little chats, and it's just so interesting to see where people are mentioning that they're from. We've got a Christchurch midwife from New Zealand who's also a cranial sacral therapist. We have some language I can't read. I can read it, but I don't know what it's saying. That's cool. And bonjour. So we have somebody from France here. and Italy has signed in. I'm guessing that the language I can't read might be Spanish. I'm not sure. And yeah, so look, as I say, welcome everybody. Please let us know where you are. It's just great to hear. So I'll hand over to Joanne now, and she's going to take over the screen. So fantastic.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Let's get going. So I am going to talk about the work that I've been doing for 35 years on the pregnancy that follows the loss of a baby. So I'm just going to give you some quick statistics. We know that 25 to 30% of all pregnancies end in loss. In African Americans, here in the States anyway, it's 2 times more. Australian, it's 3 times more. Miscarriage is 1 in 5 pregnancies, and I'm going to definitely touch on that as well. And we also know from reproductive technology that it's increased the occurrence of loss in multi-fetal pregnancy. 3% of pregnancies result in children with special needs. So I always like to keep in mind that that's really important. Having been a preschool special education teacher, I actually started the first pregnancy after loss group from a family that had been in the program or had a special needs child who was severely damaged at birth. And when they were in their subsequent pregnancy, they reached out for help. And we also know that previous loss is both a medical risk in the next pregnancy and places someone at risk for mental health complications. I'm not going to be discussing twin loss, but I think it's important to know that in our work and doing the groups that we've done at the hospital, I did them for 16 years on a weekly basis. When there's a loss in a multi-fetal pregnancy, the surviving twin in utero also experiences grief. So it's important to keep that in mind too. So I kind of want to start with just the traditional prenatal visits, because I'm sad to say that in all the years I've been doing this work, the parents that are coming into my weekly pregnancy after loss group through Star Legacy Foundation, it's the same kind of losses. It's very, very discouraging to me that things haven't changed. And one reason is because what goes on in the traditional prenatal visit, they do the mother's weight, blood pressure, urine specimens, check for fetal heart rate, measure the size of the uterus, but the relationship between the mother, father, and the fetus is not always assumed. They think pregnancy, but not baby until after birth. I just need to ask, can everybody see this black part that I'm seeing on my screen? Not sure how to get rid of that.
The screen looks okay at my end.
Oh, okay, great. And I'm not going to worry about it.
Clearly, so it's good.
So we need to change that too. And I know my 2 daughters that have had children, I would always ask them after their appointments, even with midwives, did they ask you about the baby? And they did, they didn't. So I think that the guidelines with respect to fetal movement is that all pregnant women should routinely be provided with information on risk of stillbirth, just as after birth. For the first pediatric visit, they talk about the risk of SIDS. And we need to start doing that without frightening people, because some clinics will say, oh, we don't want to talk about stillbirth because it will scare them. But there is a way to do it. Between 18 and 23 weeks, women need to know how to recognize fetal movement versus contractions and provide guidance on learning the difference. Now that might seem early, but working in the high-risk center that I was at for 18 years, we would find a fair number of people at 20, 22, 23 weeks who thought they were just feeling fetal movements. When they finally did go in, their cervix has already started to dilate. So it's really important to start even at 18 to 23 weeks, helping parents, moms, know the difference between fetal movements and contractions. All women should be advised to contact a health provider if they feel any change. I just think about someone that has soon to have her second subsequent baby, but she was 32 weeks, maybe 34, when she went into the doctor and said she thought the movements had changed. It was a little rolling more and not pushes. And he said, oh, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And unfortunately, the baby died the next week. So she was reporting change, and she was dismissed. And so the other thing at each visit is to emphasize the importance of maternal awareness of fetal movements at each visit. And that's always like, tell me about your baby. Claire Thorwick, who was the antenatal testing nurse that I worked with at the hospital, never put the monitor on the baby, on the mom, before she would say, tell me what you know about your baby. And the moms would say, well, you know, she's at the doctor and he said the baby's probably 3.5, 4 pounds. And she would say, no, tell me what you know about your baby. And that would make them think, gosh, what do I know about the baby? And then she would put the monitor on. And I think that's important too, that you're beginning in the very beginning of pregnancy to help them know who their baby is. Kick counts, really kick charts are not recommended. Research does not support that. So one of the things that I always say to people when I see a pregnant woman, I say, how old is your baby? Not when is your baby due? Because the baby is already here. And when you've had a pregnancy following loss, I'm going to get into this more when I talk about emotional cushioning. These moms will be like, they want to go up to pregnant women and say, do you know what can happen? So we try to talk about, rather than scaring people, saying, just go up and say, oh, how old is your baby? And when they say the age, start talking about what's going on with fetal development during those stages. So subsequent pregnancy, the need for education. And this is actually a quote from a mother. One of the first presentations I did in Australia was talking, and I thought it was pretty profound. It's about grief management, because being pregnant again is the biggest reminder of the greatest loss a mother will ever experience. And you know what? This is true for dads too. And one of the latest book that we just published, dads talking about, they don't want their partner to wear the same clothes that they wore in the previous pregnancy, because it's the biggest reminder of the worst experience they've ever had too. And of course, children, siblings alive at the time are also worried about what's going to happen. So we published really in 1997, I think, the first things that we found from doing groups, the developmental task of a subsequent pregnancy that's very, very different than a normal pregnancy. Working with the fear and anxiety of an abnormal pregnancy, which is normal behavior. Avoiding attachment for fear of future loss. I don't want to become attached because I don't want to get hurt. Yet if I don't attach, that's not fair to the baby. That was one of our big themes this Monday night. Oh, last night, actually, it's Tuesday here for me. Moving past the unwillingness to give up, grieving out of loyalty to the baby who died. I feel guilty if I love this baby too. And it is not unresolved grief. It's a new layer of grief. And I always like to emphasize that, because sometimes I would get referrals from the perinatologist or the clinic nurse, they're still grieving their last baby. Well, of course they are. And they do feel guilty if I love this baby, because if I love this baby and everybody's telling me to move on, what does that mean if this baby dies too? Are they going to ask me to do the same thing? And then attaching to the unborn child separately from the deceased child. I think that might be the hardest for me. I realize this is a whole different baby and it's another boy. So they also, because intellectually they know it's a different baby, but emotionally they still want that other baby back. And then grieving the loss of self, the self that is parent. You know, as parents, we're supposed to keep our children safe. And when they couldn't keep their baby safe in utero, or didn't even know that their baby had died till they went to the doctor, that is really hard on sense of self as parent. And again, for fathers too. Some fathers have an additional task, fear of maternal death, if it was a very high risk pregnancy. We've had a fair number of people who not only did the babies die and were very sick, but the mothers were in intensive care. So they worry about that as well. And, you know, it's their job to keep babies, keep their partners safe too. So post-traumatic stress disorders are really pretty not unusual in the pregnancy that follows loss, which is why they need so much help in talking about what happened the last time and how it can be different this time. So working with the nurses and Claire in antenatal testing and Linda Parker, who was the clinical nurse specialist at the time, we really developed a prenatal parenting intervention based on the work of Selma Freiberg's Ghost in the Nursery. So we combined my early childhood background with Freiberg's work, who was actually the mother of infant mental health. And I thought this quote was really interesting. In every nursery, there are ghosts. They are visitors from the unremembered past of the parents, the uninvited guests at the christening. Under all favorable circumstances, the unfriendly and uninvited spirits are banished from the nursery and return to their subterranean dwelling place. So part of the work that in infant mental health that Selma's group really believe is that you need to say the words out loud of the fears and anxieties that you have. And again, I'll touch on that more. So we developed continued bond attachment theories where it is a different baby and a different story. And it involves the parents and siblings alive at the time. So it's this interwoven of always working with the deceased baby and the unborn baby at the same time. Now, what that means is you are always honoring, yes, you are still a parent to that deceased baby, and it's okay to begin to try and embrace this new unborn baby. So like when we're talking about the baby carried in the subsequent pregnancy at 20 weeks, who we know can hear, respond to the voices of the siblings and parents and dad, remind them that their deceased baby at that age also knew that. So their deceased baby knew them as a parent too. Because trying to build memories of your time with the deceased baby can be really hard unless you go back to times in the pregnancy that they were doing with that baby too. And I just think about the grandparent group that I do, how there's like, we have no memories. So even for grandparents, trying to help them journal and write about what they knew about their deceased grandchild during the pregnancy. And I also think that we have to keep in mind, if you look at, if you Google fetal cells, that they are the new unborn baby is sharing the same space as the baby who died. And this is one of the mom's quotes that I have. I thought a lot about one of the coolest things about subsequent children is you just think they were in the same space. And I always wonder if they knew that somebody else was living in there. I think they do. That's why it's important for me to let them know that Matthew was there, that he's their brother, and to celebrate his birthday. That is a significant day. We recognize it. This really helps fathers too. I think of somebody when I was doing an infant loss group, and they came in as a couple, and her loss had been at 14 weeks, and she was grieving really deeply. And he was like, I don't understand it. We were barely pregnant. We can have another baby. I don't understand why her grief is so strong. And when I talked about, because the fetal cells are still in her body, the next time he came back, he said, that was so helpful for me to know and to understand and allow her to have her grief. And I also think of another mom that came into my office and said to me, I still feel the presence of my baby. And, you know, that's because fetal cells are still there. And of course, they still feel the presence of their baby. So we know that women maintain an inexpressible continued bond to the deceased baby, men struggling with the paradox of a new pregnancy, a new unborn baby. And there's a thin line between ghosts and angels. So our work is really to help them identify the emotions that they are feeling, process the emotions, and then express the emotions. Because of course, like I think about people in the group saying, I just am having a really hard time connecting with this baby. Again, my other baby was a perfect child, but they need to know that it's okay because they do love the baby that died more than the baby that they're carrying now. It's just like anybody in a healthy pregnancy, in their second pregnancy, they can think, I will never love another child as much as I love this first child because she is so perfect. But you know that after the baby's born, babies just draw you into wanting to know who they are. And so it's okay to let them know. It really helps a lot of people say, okay, yeah, you're right. This is why I'm having such a hard time. I know my deceased baby, and I love that baby dearly and miss it. So, so it's going to take me time to embrace this new baby. So that's why at each stage of pregnancy, we continue to talk about the deceased baby and the unborn baby's behavior now. And I think of a psychologist in Germany at one of the presentations saying, when the it becomes you, the dialogue begins. When the it of this unborn baby becomes you, okay, the sibling to my deceased baby, then they can start talking more to the baby. So Mind Fetalness is a group in, I want to say Sweden. And I really thought this was wonderful. Rather than saying count your fetal movement counts, you want parents to know the intensity of the movements, the way in which babies move, and how much the baby moves. The questions to be answered are, can the movements be felt distinctly? Are the movements of the same intensity as usual? Does the fetus move as much as usual? And my colleague Jane Moreland extends that by saying, is your baby a morning baby, an afternoon baby, or an evening baby? Here is the link to this. They have been using this with looking at preventing cesarean births. And there's the study that one of the studies they're doing is they have the brochure, and half of the midwives give just the brochure to the pregnant woman. The other half sit down and read the brochure with them and talk about it. And they found a significant difference in cesarean births from the moms that had the intervention of just knowing about their baby. And that's so important, not to just give them a brochure, which anybody that's in this group that's going to these webinars, I'm preaching to the choir, but it's really important. I think about the research that I did in Belfast, Northern Ireland years ago, where I was doing a newborn assessment, modified Brazelton, and I had every other boy baby, every other girl baby that saw me doing this intervention, showing the parents so they could follow their voice, follow the ball. And there would be a mom who was in my other group watching, and I would think, oh my God, my research is going to get all screwed up because they were big wards. It was way back in 1987. But there was significant difference in the mothers who knew more about their babies postpartum than the moms who had no intervention at all. So it's not just telling them, it's showing them. So why do they need groups? And I think this is so important. Sorrow, which has no vent in tears, may make other organs weep. So it's important to have a full medically holistic biopsychosocial team approach is best. Refer to educational support in person or online. When additional support is needed, individual counseling therapy is needed. So emotional cushioning, yes, but the baby is already here. And emotional cushioning, of course, I mean, we talk about that so much in the group. Someone brought it up again this last night, and it's so hard, and I understand that. I have never had a loss myself, but in my research and working with these families, I totally understand why they are afraid to go in and embrace this new unborn baby. But we know that when we did our first pregnancy after loss support group together, Linda Parker and I, there were 5 moms. And when they left, first of all, we said, we'll see you in 2 weeks, which is how most infant loss groups at the time were run. And they're like, we can't wait 2 weeks. We need to come every week. And when they left, Linda, as the clinical nurse specialist, turned to me and said, did you see all those moms with high-risk pregnancies? Because she heard them afraid to think about contractions, some were even afraid to touch their abdomen. And she saw some of these moms are going to have preterm babies again because they're not paying attention. And in fact, we did have one loss in all those years of someone who thought she was almost term, that what she was feeling was baby movements when it was contractions. And I turned to her and said, did you see all those babies with attachment disorders? Because I could visualize these little babies in there thinking, but mom, I'm here. You need to pay attention to me. So one of the things that we did before we did our weekly group was have a mind-body class where we did guided imagery relaxation with the moms before group started. And also, I need to caution, when you do a guided imagery for a pregnant person, don't use a standard one. You need to use something. They are afraid of their babies dying. They are afraid to trust their bodies. So it's helpful to talk about what their bodies are doing to protect the baby, and sometimes even including the unborn, the deceased baby. Like, what would you want your deceased baby to know to tell you about your new unborn baby? So from doing the group, we put together this CD. Whoops, wait, that should have come last. Parenting your baby before birth, because the parents wanted to have something that they could take home with. And I'm just going to show you the first, have you listen to the first couple minutes of it. Hopefully you'll be able to hear it.
Welcome. This program will introduce you to the parenting experience of pregnancy. Most of you can think of yourself as pregnant, but it may be more of a challenge to think of yourself as already a parent to the baby within. Often people speak of when the baby comes or when you become a mother or father, with no acknowledgement of parenthood until after the baby is born. But in truth, the baby is already present. The feelings you are experiencing are because a baby is growing and developing inside you. In the next section, you will explore your body and baby together. This is a progressive relaxation covering how the body nurtures and parents your baby within. You will experience the physical and spiritual connections that exist between you and the baby. This relaxation program is about being a parent as your baby grows and develops inside you. It is not about an imagined baby, but a baby who is already with you, hearing your voice and experiencing whatever you experience, no matter what week of pregnancy you are in. It is about honoring your role as parent to this baby, while acknowledging the emotional ups and downs that accompany any parenting experience. And it is about letting the baby know who you are and who the family is that he or she will soon enter.
No, I have to tell you, my two daughters that had pregnancies did not use the CD. They thought it was silly. But one of their friends who had a stillbirth, full-term stillbirth, used it every single night. And she said it was the only time that she could let herself be with this new unborn baby and trust that maybe this new baby would be born. So I thought it was funny. I suppose because their mother made it, that they didn't think it was funny. But the other thing that we do at the end of each group, because there's so much talk about, I'm afraid, I don't like to talk about the baby. The one good thing people are saying about COVID is people don't even know they're pregnant because they're doing their work from Zoom. So people don't even want to share that, yes, indeed, they're having a baby. In fact, someone that just had her babies 3 weeks ago, she was having twins and she didn't tell anybody she was pregnant again. She announced it after the twins were born. She said she was just not going to tell people because so many people did not acknowledge her deceased baby. And so she was just keeping the pregnancy to themselves. So at the end of each group, I have this little booklet, Affirmation for Your Healthy Pregnancy. I start with the youngest baby. Last night, the youngest baby was just 5 weeks gestation. And I end with the oldest baby. Last night, that baby was 37 weeks. And I do an affirmation. I say goodnight to the babies. And I say, we've been talking about your deceased baby, your fears and anxieties, but there's another person in this group, and that's your unborn babies. And so we say goodnight to the babies that are in the room. And the other wonderful thing is the other parents learn about, they know this deceased baby too. And that's a very powerful thing for people to know. There's a group from all over the United States and Mexico and Canada, actually, who know each other's babies and support each other. It's pretty amazing. So I hope I can stop that.
Welcome.
You've already
This program will introduce you to the parenting experience of pregnancy. Most of you can think of yourself as pregnant.
I don't want to stop.
But it may be more of a challenge to think of yourself.
Anybody out there have tips?
If you just do the right arrow to go to the next slide.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Oh, that's what you were doing?
Oh,
Welcome.
Oh.
We've welcomed enough. I'm out.
It's all right. All technical. Maybe if you come off the full slide view
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
and
do.
then click onto
No,
the
that one.
slide.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Welcome.
How come I can't? There we go. We've welcomed it enough. Now let's get back to the slideshow. Which, how come I can't get to that now? Hmm. This is all in.
Yeah, that little button down the bottom.
Okay, I don't want to leave. Yeah, it's in the way.
Or you can carry on with the last slides like that if that's easier.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry guys.
No, it's
So,
all right. It's okay. It's all good.
we know also from research that parents who are able to share their symptoms from perinatal loss with outside networks were associated with fewer post-traumatic stress symptoms later on. So the themes that we're finding in the group are sharing the news. Like I said, they don't want to share the news. I love this one, showing off the bump. One night, one mom said, well, I haven't told anybody because I'm, working from home, but she said, I kind of miss people touching my abdomen, touching my bump. And so we all said, oh, well, stand up and we'll show you. And she said, well, I can't because I don't have anything on from my waist down. So in spite of the things, the, sadness and the grief that we talk about, we also have some fun too. Gender issues are huge. If you have lost a baby girl, in your mind, you are mother to a baby girl. So it takes a while to understand that this is a different baby and this is a little boy. And when I started doing the affirmations, like one time when someone came on, she's like, I don't want to tell you how many weeks pregnant I am. I'll just tell you I'm in my second trimester. And then when she saw at the end what we were doing, she shared. But you know why she said that? Because she could think about, I'm pregnant, but there's not a baby inside. And so telling how many weeks pregnant her unborn baby was and what week he was, and knowing something about his development at that time was really pretty scary. And another mom said, yeah, she said, Joanne, when you first started this, I was like, no, I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear. She said, I so enjoy now every week knowing what my unborn baby is doing. So you're gradually helping them embrace this new unborn baby that's coming. So of course, dealing with stress and anxiety, what are they doing to help with their stress and anxiety? We're always honoring each other's babies. And the other really huge thing is how they learn to empower each other to ask for the care they need. Like one of the moms last night said after her appointment that the ultrasound technician said, yeah, everything's perfect. And she said, after I left, I'm like, what's perfect? What do you mean everything's perfect? And so the other moms would say, yeah, you need to say, it's not just enough to say everything's fine. They need to know why everything's fine. And that's really important too. So they just really, another mom said it, this is the anniversary of her baby that died, and she's the same gestational age, and everybody just said, you don't have to wait 2 weeks to go back. Call and tell them this is the anniversary of my daughter that died. I need to come in again just for reassurance. So that's really important. So then as they get closer to the last weeks of pregnancy, there's so much I could figure out how to get this bigger. Increased anxiety is normal. Remember, the last birth meant death. And so of course they're going to be more anxious. We encourage doula support. Before COVID, we always had people tour the area where they were giving birth because I always would say, if you're going to have flashbacks, you want to have it before you go in active labor, because then you'll see things in the space that will remind you of what happened last time, and you can put that on your birth plan. It's different now, and a lot of the people are going to the same area where they're going to have their baby. So in a sense, they have toured. Putting a sign on the door that this is a baby following loss is huge, so that everybody that enters that room knows this is not their first baby or their second baby. One mom said, when someone new came in, she would say, "Have you read my birth plan?" And if they said no, she said, "Well, then you can't be in this room." So she was really adamant that she did not want anybody in there that didn't know she was not a first-time mom. And then postpartum is another new layer of grief, because all of a sudden, it's very developmental. All of a sudden they realize what they've missed in their deceased baby. And this picture, which I'm sorry to say you can't see as big, is one of the couples whose loss was at 37 weeks, a previous loss. At 36 weeks, the dad sent an email to their friends and said, "Please send us a symbol of hope." And so they made this beautiful wall of hope for their last weeks of pregnancy. So the themes in yes.
Joanne, do you want to just try again? If you go down to the bottom of the screen, there's that little like television looking icon that is next to the minus sign. And if you click on that, that will enlarge the screen.
The minus sign. I do not see it.
So if you look to the bottom right, just below the slide, the main slide that you can see, and there's a bunch of little icons there.
Yeah, but see, this thing is in my way. My sharing space. That's the problem.
Okay. That's
Well,
all right.
you can't do it for me. You can't do it for me because.
No, I can't.
Sharing. Okay, sorry.
All good.
Yes, so now they have to separate this baby from the deceased baby. Watching development of a healthy baby is really challenging, because they see, and this is for siblings too. I remember one mom saying that her two older siblings would say, "Oh, look, Mom, we never got to see Tony sit up, and we never got to, see him play." So it resurrected her grief, but it was also really important for her kids to acknowledge that they were missing their baby that died too. Helping the older sibling around the loss in the new pregnancy is really important too. So we have parents that are pregnant in my Monday pregnancy after loss group also join the parenting after loss, because they are parenting a sibling who knows their deceased baby died as they're pregnant again. So we talk about how they can help their older sibling too. People still not understanding grief continues. That is huge. People think, "Oh, finally, now everything's going to be better," and that's just not the way it is. And of course, protective parenting, it takes a long time to trust that all will be well. So the foundations of intervention are all group intervention, including therapeutic, can be tailored for individual practice. Remember that parenting is a relationship with knowledge as a guide, which is the fetal development that's going on. Understand the stages of the parent-infant relationship begin in pregnancy. There are no magic phrases, but whatever you say will work. Magic and letting them know you care. By truly listening to their stories, we can come to understand both the unique nature of the individual journey as well as the common threads this experience has woven into their lives. Giving false reassurance that everything will be fine this time is not helpful. And so many people say that to these pregnant people, and it's not helpful. No, there are no guarantees till the babies come. Parents do not want to be viewed as crazy or overzealous. Fathers and partners, as well as siblings, need to be acknowledged. And attachment issues are normal, but critical that they be addressed. So I just want to thank all the parents who these two books are totally the parent stories. The one on the right is more clinically based, how to do the prenatal intervention. And the new one, Pregnancy and Parenting, all the proceeds go to Star Legacy Foundation to help support our groups. And in both books, there is a chapter for fathers, a chapter on siblings, a chapter on extended family grandparents, and one on alternative therapies, guided imagery, the importance of yoga and mindfulness. So these are the resources. So I'm going to, now I can stop sharing my screen, right? Kathy?
Yes, you can. Yep. You just click on the stop share.
Okay, got it.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Joanne.
Yes, do we have questions? Because I feel like I talked really fast and
those that have come through, you've actually answered, so that is really good. I think one of the questions I'd like to ask is, what are the things that you find that health professionals generally do really well when it comes to helping their clients in this situation? And what are the things that we do really badly? And just it's those fundamental things that are always done poorly. Are there some certain things that stand out to you?
well, the things, well, first of all, one of the strengths of the group is if they're not liking what they get from their healthcare provider, these group of other parents say you need to change your healthcare provider because it's really important that they trust their healthcare provider. And I think of Manny Gaziano, the perinatologist I worked with, that said, you need to tell your physicians right up front, we're going to be really anxious and it may have nothing to do with your care, but just know this is going to be an anxious pregnancy. What they do really well is to make sure that they talk about the deceased baby, talk about this as a sibling to the deceased baby. So they're constantly honoring, you're still a parent to that baby. It's okay to embrace this baby. That they acknowledge the anniversary dates, like this mom last night who was crying because she said, I had a visit last week and they're telling me not to come back till for 2 weeks, but this is the anniversary, the same gestation, 28 weeks of when my baby died. And everybody's like, hey, you just need to call and tell them you need to come in. So I would say the biggest thing is telling them not just everything's fine, but why everything's fine. The other thing is sometimes a perinatologist would say they just don't get it because they keep asking me the same questions. And as a non-nurse myself, I could identify with that because it's like, I didn't always understand either why their babies had died. Think of somebody that was in the hospital because of, they were worried about hypertension. And I remember saying to Claire, why is she here? Because her blood pressure is fine. But you know what? Like 2 days later, it spiked and she had that baby because she was at risk for preeclampsia. So it's making sure that they know the anniversary dates and they understand that pushing is really going to be hard because they're afraid to push. And you just keep saying, this is a healthy baby. This time it's, you know, a deceased baby can't help in the birth process because they don't have the muscle to help going down, but this baby can, and this baby will. So.
Right. I really like the very simple difference that you can say is that rather than this baby is doing fine, is this baby is doing fine because. and just, okay, people can say, oh, well, it's too complicated. You need to go to university for years to understand why we can look at this and say that baby is fine on the ultrasound. But no, there's a way that you can address it, and, or the way that you're palpating that belly. Just those little things. It makes a lot of sense. And I love some of your other sayings I've made a note of. The mindfulness. So is that an organization that people around the world can connect in with, or is that just a local one?
No, it's Radstat in, I think it's Sweden. And that's the term that she's developed. There's a lot of articles about it. It's wonderful, really. It's more than just fetal awareness. It's mindfulness. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
And
the other thing I'm having, the other thing is I'm having parents that have siblings is to videotape them reading stories to their unborn baby, just because they don't have memories like that of the deceased baby. And God forbid this baby might die too, but they will have the memories. And I always say, and think how fun it will be for this new unborn baby to look at those videos of his older brother or sister reading the book to him. So
very nice. So if there's any other questions that anybody has, please do type them in now. We're almost out of time. But yeah, look, just Jill Phillips has said, such a brilliant presentation, Joanne. So much to think about. Many of these issues are new to me, and some feel a bit different from awareness in the UK, which is interesting. And yeah, so just really appreciate your such specialist expertise in this area. And even the idea, it's funny that you comment about the idea of putting a sign on the door in birthing suite, that this particularly with those women that appear to be having their first baby, that it is not their first baby. And, often that can be already written up on the board or on the computer screen of their, their gravida and their parity. But having that little bit more understanding that, and it could be a very subtle sign that's put up there that not, if you don't want to have it so that prior pregnancy loss, prior loss or something, but there could be a very subtle sign that's just velcroed up on a sticky button that everybody, that the staff themselves know that person has had that perinatal loss. Very nice subtle things.
Yeah, there's a lovely sample in our new book of a mom that shared her what sign that she put over her door, but also have one in the postpartum too, if they get moved here in the state, because one person said it worked really great in labor and birth, but once I moved to the other area, I got all these questions again. Oh, is this your first baby? So
right. And it might be the first baby that you are learning how to breastfeed, but it's just not your first baby. And having
that's right. Every baby's different.
Yeah. So I think that's a really, I certainly know that in our local hospital and even our local birth centre, I don't think that we have signs up. And that's a very simple thing that could be added on and make that little subtle difference. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful, simple, effective idea. So there, we're going to wind it up here, but that's wonderful. Joanne, is there anything else that you would like to conclude with?
Oh, this is a good question. Does anybody worry about hearing other people's stories? That's why people don't want to come to group. But hearing other people's stories also helps them go back to their doctor and say, so-and-so's baby died because of this. How can you tell me this isn't going to happen to my baby? So it's really, I can't begin to tell you how impressed I am by these women who support each other and just get strength and learn so much about how to act.
It actually reminds me of a conversation I had with my mother years ago that uh, to in her days, I should say, of having babies, which was in the 50s and 60s, every mother knew about the potential of loss. And it wasn't foreign. It was very much, it was right. I guess it was right on the edge of their pregnancies all the time. And she said, we buried babies back then. Like, we knew about it. And, you know, if it didn't happen to us, it happened to a friend. And particularly, I guess, because babies that are born prematurely now have a far better chance of life than they did, you know, 50 years ago. That's drastically improved. So it was something that was very familiar to her as a young mum, but that familiarity in the Western world has gone a little bit. So now it's more foreign and it happens to people we don't know. It doesn't happen to us, kind of thing. That difference in that 50 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've just started another book from my data of adults who were the child in their family born after loss. And when you're thinking about pregnancies, how many of those adults are afraid about pregnancies too because of the loss of their sibling before them? So, and then their mothers, of course, it resurrects their grief too.
Yes,
So,
with the grandbabies.
yeah.
Yeah, and their daughter being pregnant, and yeah.
Right.
Oh, it's a deep topic. It's just, yeah, we have hardly done it justice, but we've learned a lot from you today, Joanne, and thank you very much for your time.
Oh,
And
thank
thank
you
you to
so
all
much
of
for
those.
asking me.
It was great. And thank you for everybody that took the time to be live. And of course, I know a lot of you will be watching this afterwards as well in your own time. So thanks everybody for being here. And I look forward to seeing you next week and wish you all a lovely rest of your week. And thank you so much. Thank you, Joanne.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Okay, bye everybody.